All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we will start our organizational meeting. We'll have a roll call when we get to our regular meeting. So first item up is to nominate a president and vice president for this upcoming calendar year. So with that, I'll ask for nominations for president.
I would like to nominate Tom Price.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. Can I have a motion to close the nominations for president?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Could I have a second? Second by Lori Bloom. Okay. Roll call, please.
Miss Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom? Yes. Miss Laird?
Yes.
And Mr. Price?
Yes. So nominations are closed. So now there's only one nominee, but we have to go through, I'll go through each one of you by voice for vote for presidency. So Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu is not here. Miss Laird?
Yes, Tom.
And Miss Lewis?
Yes.
And Mr. Price, yes. All right. So I will be the president this next year. So we need to do the oath real quick. I'll come over. You want me to come over there?
Ooh, I'm over there.
Doesn't matter.
Where? Oh, I need more stuff than today. So.
Maybe just a recommendation. Maybe our audience can't hear anything that doesn't go microphone. I know it's not easy to do, but just maybe somebody should at least try to make sure our friends at home and
Gotcha.
the recording can be
Okay.
made. Thank you.
You mean I need to talk?
You need to
louder
talk really loudly, Megan, unlike your typical normal, yeah.
Okay. So the oath for Board of President. Yes, Board President. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as President of the Board of Education of Fremont City Schools District, Sandusky County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I will.
Okay, you want to go ahead and sign?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Then moving on, could I have any nominations for vice president, please?
I will nominate Ms. Chantel Laird.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for vice president? All right. Can I get a motion to close the nominations for vice president?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Bloom, Mrs. Bloom. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Roll call, please.
Miss Bloom? Yes. Miss Lewis?
Yes.
Miss Laird?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes, nominations are closed. So we have one nomination for vice president, Ms. Laird. Again, we'll just go down. Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Price, yes. So Ms. Laird will be our vice president for this upcoming year. So we'll do the oath of office for vice president.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as Vice President of the Board of Education of the Fremont City School District, Sandusky County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
Ready.
All right, you're gonna go ahead and sign. Oops, thank you.
Okay, so the next item's part of this organizational part. I'll just read through these real quick so it's made on record. It's just organizational stuff that we have to do at the beginning of every year. So item 1, fixing the time and place of our meetings. We had that as a attachment to our stuff. So that's all posted, or that will all be posted.
It will be. Mr. Price, just I clarify that. We did adjust around Thanksgiving and Christmas. So just so the board knows, I think that's kind of been typical, but I just want to make sure that 2nd and 4th is mostly the case, but there are a couple exceptions.
Right, because of the holidays.
Yep.
Item 2 is establishing a service fund for 2022. Item 3, our legislative liaison will be Ms. Laird. Item 4, the delegate to OSBA annual conference will be Ms. Lewis. The alternate delegate to OSBA annual conference is Mrs. Bloom. Our student achievement liaison in item 6 is Ms. Laird. Item 7, the trustee for the Learning and Liberty Foundation of Fremont City Schools is Mrs. Bloom. Item 8, payment of our annual membership dues to OSBA. And then for committee appointments, item 9 for the Treasurers Committee appointments, audit and records, that will be Ms. Laird. Under the Superintendent's Committee appointments, we have our Policy Committee, that will be myself. The Curriculum Quality Control Council will be Ms. Lewis and myself. The Finance Committee for 2023 will be Ms. Laird. And the Health and Wellness Committee will be Mrs. Espiritu. Also on for approval for these items for organizational purposes, the Business Advisory Council, date, time, and location, the authorization for the superintendent to act as a representative for grants. Item 13, participation in the state and federal programs. We're approving that. Item 14, the appointment of a purchasing agent, which would be our superintendent. Item 15, appointment for public records training would be for our treasurer. Item 16, authorization for investment of funds also would be our treasurer. Item 17, the request for available monies goes through the treasurer. Item 18, petty cash authorization also goes through the treasurer on an as-needed basis up to $7,000. Item 19, authorization to issue warrants, also through our treasurer. Item 20, authorization to pay mileage. 21, authorization or authorize the superintendent to hire our staff. Item 22, the approval of Bricker and Eckler to be retained as legal counsel. And then also item 23, the last one, the approval of Brinza, McIntyre, and Seed to be retained as legal counsel. So with all of those, we need a roll call for that. Could I have a motion to approve items 1 through 23, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. Item 24, we had attachments for these tax budget hearings, the alternative tax budget information, division of taxes levied, statement of fund activity, voted and unvoted debt outside the 10 mil limit, and tax anticipation notes. So could I have a motion to approve
No.
item?
This actually gets approved during the regular meeting.
Oh, okay. So that
So-
roll call is not.
That's to end the organizational meeting.
Okay,
That roll call.
gotcha. So the tax budget hearing, we will approve under your part
Well,
of
this
the
is the tax budget hearing right now, and then you'll approve the tax budget.
You just heard it.
Yes, that's the tax
That's
budget
the
hearing.
hearing.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Sorry for the
One
confusion.
has to come before the other. but you
Yeah.
have to have
Sorry.
both.
Yeah.
Sorry for my confusion. Sorry.
So,
right.
so let me make sure. So that roll call we just had was to approve those items and to close the organizational meeting.
No.
So now this roll call at the top of the page right before our regular meeting. We're going to go, that'll be a roll call, or that'll be a motion and a second to close the organizational meeting.
Okay.
So then we'll close the organizational meeting, then we'll call to order our regular meeting. So,
Okay.
okay. All right. So can I get a motion to close our organizational meeting, please? Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Bloom?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes. So our organizational meeting is now closed. Now we will call to order for our regular meeting. We will have, since it is a separate meeting, do we need to have the Pledge of Allegiance again?
I don't think it's terribly necessary, but unless you guys think we should.
I mean, we're all present. We've already.
Let's
Okay.
Let's roll.
Okay. So we'll do roll call for our regular meeting, please.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Ms. Spiritu? Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Here. Okay. Next item. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting held December 12th, 2022, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Laird. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes, motion's approved. Legislative report.
I wanted to do a follow-up on the various school choice legislative pieces that are out there nationally. I know ours in the state of Ohio is still in motion, and we've been keeping our eye on that. I thought you might find it interesting that the Kentucky State Supreme Court made a ruling on it. And that's not to say that Ohio will see things the same, but I think it is relative to the conversation we're having. So I just want to read a little bit about that. The source I'm going to cite, Megan, is Spectrum One News, December 15th, and I'll have this document for you. But in a nutshell, those who opposed it said we simply can't afford to support two different education systems, one private and one public, on the taxpayer's dime. And this ruling supports that concern. The decision is proof that the courts continue to serve as an important check against the legislative overreach. That's how those who present opposition felt about this in Kentucky. And if we go down to the Supreme Court ruling, it said the Supreme Court ultimately found that the formula violated the Constitution, stating we are compelled to agree that the EOA Act violates the plain language of Section 184 of their state constitution, said their Chief Justice. Simply stated, it puts the Commonwealth in the business of raising sums for education other than in common schools. And we've talked about that as well, that ours also references common schools. And it was further stated in the article that lawmakers should now turn their attention away from inequitable and unconstitutional voucher programs. I found that interesting that they referred to them as vouchers in the same way, even though the formula looked a little different to me in Kentucky, but still labeled the same type of program, and focus on their constitutional mandate to provide for an efficient system of common schools throughout the state. That means providing adequate funding to the many different components of successful public schools, including skilled teachers, up-to-date instructional materials, non-academic supports, safe learning environments, and that's how we ensure that all Kentucky children thrive, no matter their race, family, income, or zip code. So I thought that was interesting. It's certainly relevant to our conversation, and that's all I have for you tonight, unless you have questions.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. No walk-on items tonight?
Sure.
All right. We'll go to the first hearing of the public. If anyone would like to address the board, they can come to the podium to state your name and address for record purposes.
I'm not prepared to do this. My name is Kay Mooney Cox. My address is 2327 County Road 241, Fremont. Is that all?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't prepare a response for the last meeting I was here in which Mr. O'Dear, the Scottish name, spoke about giving vouchers to parents for whatever school they wanted their children to go to, which seems like a good idea. Parents decide what school their children should go to. But it's true up to a point. At some point, it's not in the interest of the state to send children to schools that are teaching them anti-democratic ideals, teaching them inaccurate history, teaching them it's a good idea to discriminate against LGBTQ people and persecute them because they're perverts, or it was a good thing to bring those Africans over here because we raised them up out of savagery to civilization, or worse things. Suppose, or teaching them not that science is a bunch of bunk, or worse things. Suppose you had a bunch of Islamic extremist people who wanted to establish a madrasa. Are you going to let parents send their children to that and pay for that? So I think it's not always in the interest of the state to support non-state schools. That's
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Price. It's good to see you guys. We've had a little time off here. I just wanted to kind of remind you, the first semester is done. We had exams that last week before a break. Got through that. We are roaring into our second semester, which is a little hard to believe, but here we go. I wanted to pass out, maybe if Megan could help me. This, I got it today, so I wanted to bring it as soon as I could. You may have heard that the Department of Education was going to send a letter to me and to you. So I was actually curious if any of you had received anything separately in the mail, because I got 5 copies from ODE today, and I think the assumption is that I would deliver them. So here they are. This is the letter that they voted on, a resolution. The second page is the resolution that the State Board of Education voted on last month. And it basically is that stand against the federal Title IX interpretation through the Biden administration for access. So this is sort of what's been that linchpin between sort of where the state and our state legislators want to go and where I think the federal government wants to go. So if you remember, part of that transgender issue we had was actually being enforced through the Bureau of Agriculture, Department of Agriculture, through the school lunches, right? So the school funding could be withheld for school lunches if we didn't follow the Title IX interpretation coming out of the Department of Agriculture, kind of up through the president, actually. So the state, kind of taking umbrage with that, has sort of sent this. It's worded very carefully, I thought, because if you notice that that last bullet there on the front page says this correspondence is intended to inform schools and districts, not to compel them to take a particular course of action. So it to me is like it's kind of a little bit of a legal straddle there, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm waiting because we got it now, and we've kind of in my world been talking about what this is going to look like, right? So now I'm sure the lawyers are just chewing on this right now to sort of tell us kind of what this actually means in where the rubber meets the road, right? But I thought it was impressive that it says they simply want to tell us that they oppose the proposed regulatory changes from the Department of Education. See that's the first bullet. So, but they are informing us, but not in compelling us to actually do anything about it. So it's a
So there's no penalty
right.
for us to, where the federal government has said, if you don't follow our guidelines, then we can withhold some funding through Department of Agriculture because you are not following the federal guidelines on Title IX.
Correct. That's
Where
what I
the
understand.
state is saying, we are just informing you that we disagree with the federal guidelines,
Yes.
but we're not compelling you. So the state can't come back and say, oh, and by the way, if you don't do what we say, we're going to withhold. They're not saying that.
That's what I understand. Like I said, I promise I'll find out some more.
Right, I'm sure it'll be
as it
more-
gets kind of woven out through the state. But
Or are they teeing it up that if courts rule against the state's opposition, they didn't guide us to not follow
I
the
think you're
federal
absolutely
rules?
Yes, absolutely. Because
So
they
not liable then if,
Right.
for us.
that's
not
what I mean. They came up to the
following
line but didn't cross the line. I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a ruling
Or
that you didn't have to comply with that?
well,
that.
that's the this is.
AG's on
Yeah,
one?
that's what this is. Right. So,
We have two different, from the one attorney that we have two different circuit courts in
that's
the
right.
United States that are saying
Coming
two
down
different
both sides.
things.
That's right.
So that's where she said this will have to go to the federal Supreme Court,
That's
United States
Right.
Supreme Court,
Anticipation.
because you have two circuit courts on the opposite side of the issue. So someone has to make a ruling. You can't have two circuit courts saying two different things,
Exactly.
because then that group of states is under one and the other is under something else. So
So, like I said, I'll keep you up to what I hear, and hopefully I'll get some guidance through our
Okay.
attorneys on if this is what it kind of means to us. So I just want you can read that, and digest it, and kind of we can continue to chew on that as much as we need to. So,
Well, that second bullet point there, I think they're telling us to be cautious here too. They're saying the U.S. Department of Education guidance documents are in court, therefore they're not enforceable right now. This is
Right.
our position, but
Hmm.
what we're saying is not enforceable because it's in court.
exactly. So, and that's really what our attorney said. It's still coming. We don't. Yeah. It's
Nobody
still,
knows
It's
yet,
no.
really.
It's not settled law. I think was her phrase. Yeah. It's not settled.
right.
So we got a long way to go. So
Yeah.
anyway, just wanted to kind
But
of
you're
bring
right,
that up.
Lori, some lower courts have ruled and then it got kicked up to higher courts.
Well, I know our AG jumped in with a few other AGs and they went to
Yes.
Tennessee, and Tennessee said you do not have to follow what they put out.
Yeah.
I know that's what was ruled through Tennessee, and there was a few of them. Our AG.
Yeah, they said there's 21 other state attorneys that have said that. The only problem is they're saying you don't have to follow it, but the federal government is saying, okay, don't follow it, but we're going to withhold money.
Well, they did say that they weren't allowed to do that either. They said that was illegal. I want to say
Which
the
is what-
Supreme Court.
Which there
Get back
again,
into
it's
the
still
court
in the
and-
court. So what do? Do you say no and
Yeah.
not get the money right now? I mean, what do again, schools are caught in the crosshairs of everybody because we're the low hanging fruit.
That's right.
We're the little local person that
Yep.
the communities can be divided on the topic, and it's easy to argue, and it should be the school it's this, well, it's the school district's fault for this, no, it's their fault for this, yet it's really not us. We're just following what someone is trying to tell us, but no one has a clear answer yet. So
Very true. So many get confused with the role of the school boards. Everyone comes to when they're upset, comes to
Right.
a public meeting. And I'm so glad because it is a good place to have the discussion begin.
right.
But they don't understand that we're not lawmakers, we're policymakers. When a law is made, we're required to write a policy of how we comply with the law in our district.
Yep.
So it'd be kind of nice if legislative meetings were a little bit more attended when
Yes.
those laws get passed.
And I get it. This is right in everybody's backyard. So this is an
Yeah.
easy place to do it. Not everybody wants to drive to Columbus. Not everybody wants to drive to DC. But there again, it's just, in my mind, the legislators are just leaving everybody else kind of hanging out to dry by not getting this figured out.
It'll come. It'll take some
Different,
time.
not just this topic, but many others.
Right. Anyway, it's fascinating stuff. Just more to come. So I just
Yeah.
want to get that to you as soon as I
Thank
could.
you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. I got a little bit about board appreciation, but we'll that's a motion, so we'll kind of move on. If I
Okay.
continue then.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Oh, one thing. I'm sorry. We did next week. Just FYI, our next board meeting. We're going to bring our gifted program forward to talk about that. So that'll be our next work session
Okay.
on the 23rd, something like that. Okay. So that's coming up.
Okay.
All right. Item 1, if I may proceed, consider the following donations. We got Faith Lutheran Church, Ebenezer Church, St. Paul's Episcopal Church, Holly and Joel Sebecki, and the Fremont Exchange Club, all being very generous to the district.
Can I get a motion to approve item 1, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
All right. Item 2, board, it's still your discretion. But in the past, we've surveyed the staff and we present 2 options to you. We gave those to you, I think, in December. Option A was a 60% to 40% winner over option B. Option A is the longer spring break. And I think maybe after the last couple of years, that's understandable. So I'm going to ask if your permission, if I could present option A then for the board's approval here this evening.
All right, can I get a
It wasn't a
motion?
slam dunk either, by the way. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but 60-40 was a little closer than I thought it would be even. So you can tell it's not a slam dunk. So
Well, and that makes sense too.
Yeah.
I mean, like
there are some people think
you either want to get out early or you need that extra
June's not
little
all
break
bad either,
to,
right?
to get through the rest of the school year.
Yeah, you're right. You are so right. Put your head down and go too, right? For sure.
All right, can I get a motion to approve item number 2, stating that option A for the school calendar for 2023-2024 school year, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
All right, thank you. I drove bus today, and actually I drove a clunker in the morning, and I drove one that only had like 4,000 miles on it this afternoon. What a difference in the ride, so to speak. So I'm ready to really go to item 3. But the first part of item 3 simply allows us to not. The Ohio Schools Council is a state supplier, so they don't have to go through the competitive bidding process. So they're a pre-approved state supplier. So as a part of this, you'll be kind of saying it's okay to work with them, which is legal and appropriate. And then that allows us to move ahead on the purchase of 5 buses, which we're very excited about. And this is ESSER funds, so it's no general fund dollar.
One quick thing on the school buses, correct me if I'm wrong. There is a limit as to, at some point we have to retire a school bus, correct?
Well, no, as long as they pass the Highway Patrol's very strenuous inspections, we can keep them on the road. But it gets very difficult, and mostly due to rust. The wheel wells go, the back doors go, around the tires go. They become so deteriorated rust-wise that they just aren't certifiable anymore. So it's really, we've got one that we got a 1996 bus that still runs. And it just, because it somehow has just been a great vehicle for us, and it's still going. But then I've got the one I drove this morning was a 2006, and it's tired. So I think it just depends, the quality of what they were. And so, yeah, there's no set age. As long as you
Okay.
can pass that yearly inspection,
Okay.
they can stay on the road.
I think it's good just for everyone to understand that it isn't that we just go out and buy buses whenever
No,
we want to.
no.
It's
If you
we
look
make
at
them last as long as we can.
and there's reports that Megan does on all this stuff, the T1 reports and so forth, but it evaluates our bus by age and then compares us to the average age of other districts around the state. And we drive an old fleet, and I think we're just kind of we fix it.
Right.
We just fix it. We don't
Right.
just buy new. So
Right.
no one can accuse us of overpurchasing
Okay.
buses. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve item 3, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Moving on to students. This is a approval with your permission tonight for us to join again with our Sandusky County Board of DD. We do have still quite a few students. Well, not quite a few, 9, 10,
19.
19. I'm sorry. I don't remember the number, but we did great there, didn't we?
Yeah.
but we still do have students that are fully educated at School of Hope. So that's this. And I might shout out just publicly that they've not charged us at all for the last 2 years because their funding situation was so good that they were able to pass down significant savings to us. And even this is basically a third, I think, of
It's the amount that they're actually charging us this year is only 33% of what the total cost is for them to educate these students.
So,
And that 19 actually includes preschool. So he might have been closer with 9 with the school age students.
Okay.
anyway.
So he's not a total dummy.
But some of the students are very expensive to educate. So it's a
Right.
significant amount. But anyway, their permission will approve that contract.
Can I get a motion to approve item 4, please?
So moved.
Motion by Miss Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion?
This would be something that wouldn't be covered with a voucher. I'm just going to throw that out. These students wouldn't, I mean, talk about access and even what Mr. McIntosh, I remembered his name after you, it says McIntosh, but talked about, well, that ability to educate every child, or that commitment to educate every child is a part of what we do here. So I'm sorry, like a little soapbox there.
And I just want to say thank you to the board of DD. I mean, I know we have a great relationship with them. They're great to work with, but for them to pass this savings on to us, I mean, just shows what great work they do, for our county and everything. So thank you very much to the board of DD for that. So roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Moving on, item 5 in our personnel. Brenda Fisher, retiring from Ross, 22 years here, but she had quite a few years at some other districts before she came here. She's the one, though, guarantee you at the gold medal banquet, not gold medal, I think the wrong one. Top 25. Yeah, top 25 banquet in the summer where the top students recognize top teachers. You'll have always more than one student, 2 or 3 sometimes, tapping her as that teacher that has made a difference in them. So I just want to wish her well. She served our students with. No, there's a lot. Also, too, you have to convince some students not to avoid her because she's got a reputation very tough, but just good, really, really good. We have a lot of writers out there who are little giants because of Brenda Fisher. Item 6, staff substitutes. You got Stacy Proctor and Felicia Wise. And then Part B, some appointments. Robert Artino as custodian. Melinda Metcalf as a bus driver, top of the next page. And then Cheryl Schaefer in a cook position. Also, a few more support staff substitutes listed at the end of item 6. Item 7, supplemental contracts. You can see our spring musical. Very excited to roll that out again. We had such a good time in the last one. We're going to try it again. So we've got folks that are helping us with that, but also a couple elementary music programs as well. Item 8, supplemental duty positions. We've got a couple more on the next page. Kylie Mears. She's also helping us with our spring theater. She helped last fall with costumes. Item 9, special event workers. Mr. Heinlein is a bus chaperone, and I'll note that that's a volunteer position. Consider approval for the student teacher mentors. Those are all the cooperating teachers who have student teachers. You notice there's one there for $100 because she has 2. So there you go. If I can have a motion for those personnel items, please.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve items 5 through 10, please? Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Miss Laird. Any discussion? I just want to say real quick about Mrs. Fisher. My oldest daughter, Cassidy, had her, and I had the opportunity to go in and talk to her, and she reminded me the best teacher I ever had at Clyde was Mrs. Detterman. Jane Detterman was an English teacher also, and did not like that class when I was in high school, and I ended up having to have her 2 years in a row. But the best teacher I've ever had,
Yeah.
hands down.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Fisher just from the moment I met her, that's who it reminded me of. And I'm like, whoever takes her class is going to be a better student for that. She just, I mean, we have great teachers, and she just was one that stuck out to me that my daughter happened to have. So congratulations to her on her retirement, but thank you for all the work that she's put in and all the impact that she's made on students over the years. So,
Nice.
all right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
All right.
Passes on.
Item 11. Yeah. Let me read one off first. I've got certificates for you for School Board Recognition Month, and also the goodies there. Are those from you?
No, I'm not that nice.
I think Gina Heinlein. I'm going to give public shout out to Gina. That's got Gina written all over it. So, couple
Thank you,
treats
Gina,
there.
if
Yeah.
you're listening.
You're way more thoughtful than I am, that's for sure.
That'll taste good for the national title game for the college football game tonight.
Right there, you go. That's right. That's right. But anyway, thank you for all you do, and it's a tough job. The certificate here says certificate appreciation is presented to, and then it has one for each of you, in sincere appreciation for exemplary leadership and service to public schools. And it's presented by Christine Varwig, President of Ohio School Board Association, and Richard Lewis, Chief Executive Officer of the Ohio School Board Association. And I have them pass out here. I think I may just, Sarah, you're the newest. We'll start with the newest. I just want to appreciate, I think you've already tremendously affected this board. Your experience and your insight to the community, and your knowledge of the systems available to students and due process. And I mean, just you bring a wealth of information to this board, and I appreciate that. So I just
Thank
wanted
you
you to
so
know that.
much.
So glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Lori Bloom, I'll probably have her head examined, because in the middle of when the world was absolutely upside down, she said, "Sign me up." And I remember thinking, who in the world would walk into this snake pit right now and not go the other way?
My
So-
husband asked me if I was crazy.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe we should all ask you a little bit. But seriously, it takes a person who really cares, Lori, and we know that we do. And your family, your own children came through, and we just appreciate what your heart for what this school district can be and should be, and we know how sincere you are.
My grandson just loves you. So
Well, he loves me. Well, there you go.
he's always talking, Mr. Detweiler, Mr.
Yeah, there you go.
He asked me if you
Very
cleaned one time.
Very good. Mary Alice is not here, but about once a month she'll call me and said, "I need to talk to you," and she'll come in and sit down and we'll just talk. And she's just so caring about the district and passionate about what happens here. So, Ms. Laird, I know you and I have been at this a little while. You're on the group that hired me, right? So we've got a couple scars too. I'll never forget the day the bids came in on the elementary, and I looked at them and they were all like 40% off. I mean, they weren't even close. I remember Chantel was president at the time. I called her. I said, "I'm going to need your help here. We're going to have to do some strategizing, right?" So I'll just never forget that. And what I've been impressed with is your courage, just absolute courage to say what you believe is the right thing and do the right thing, even when it's not easy. So
Thank you.
appreciate you very much. And Mr. Price, once again, to lead through what you've led through is tremendous. I think you've done it with grace and compassion for students, and always about students. And even sometimes when the board didn't agree, you had a good way of bringing things together and keeping us from being fractured. Entertainment and now is me just kind of watching some other school boards on video. It's unbelievable how dysfunctional some of those groups are. And I think your leadership has kept us from ever being anything like that. Not that we would, but it doesn't happen on accident. So I want to thank you for
Thank
your
you.
leadership. So just want to take a moment to say how much I appreciate each one of you. Thank you. I think we need a motion for that, I think?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Can I get a motion to approve item 11, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Moving on, item 12, approval of adoption of resolution for National Mentoring Month. Boy, if there's ever been a time for mentors, it's now. So I was at Rotary meeting today, and they have 8 mentors right out of Rotary Club working with our Strive students, which are upperclassmen who are at risk of not making it. So we've got them hooked up to people who can hopefully make a difference. So it's just an example. And our ACE mentoring program has 20 maybe or so. These are just one child at a time, one adult at a time, which we all know is really the way it works. So if your approval will recognize National Mentoring Month.
Can I get a motion to approve item 12, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Laird. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom. Yes. Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. Okay, moving on to report of the treasurer.
Good evening. I have a couple of things on here tonight. The approval of the tax budget, which we had that wonderful hearing in the organizational meeting. And then I do want to talk a little bit about item number 14. You were probably looking at this going, why are we approving a $500,000 increase to the appropriations for the general fund? With that, the approval of the Sandusky County Board of DD, there was a bill associated, unfortunately, due to when the timing of, there was a lot of movement with them on preschool enrollment, and then with the state getting them the numbers and cost reimbursement so that they could bill us, it was a little bit later and it was higher than what we expected. So a small portion of that 500,000 goes towards that. We've also been running into the increase in utility costs. They've just been, we budgeted higher, but we're already meeting the top of those budgets. So my AP person came to me freaking out, and I said, okay, we'll figure it out. So probably about 250,000 of that is for utility cost increase. It's just the propane gas usage has been up and all that. So, or not been up, but the cost has greatly, and I'm sure you've seen that at home as well. And then the rest of that is we also had an increase in our ESC bill. That's more special ed funding. They had to give their staff wages so that they could be competitive. And when they gave us the fall update, it was quite a bit higher. So we're like, okay, now we've got to come in and increase the budget for those areas as well. I don't remember exactly how much higher that was, but it's probably a
couple $100,000.
Yeah, it was very significant. So it exceeded the additional cost that we had built into the budget. So I just wanted to give you a little bit, because that is a little bit of a, why are we needing that much money? So.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve items 13 and 14, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion?
So the 500,000 increase, Megan, is that the projection of those increases? How far out does that cover us?
For the rest of through June 30th of this year.
Okay.
That's
For the rest of the fiscal year.
For the rest of the fiscal year,
Okay.
hopefully.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. I mean,
Yeah, at the cost of everything. I mean, I think this is good for everybody to understand is that, you know, everybody who feels it at home. I mean, I just looked at our utility prices for the cookie shop, and our gas bill went up 125% from last year. I'm like, I'm not using any more gas. It hasn't been that cold of a winter so far, you know, so pricing, you know, everything. So just multiply that by how many fold for a school district and all of their buildings. And, you know, the one thing that I like people to understand is, you know, for me as a business, I can up my prices when my costs go up, when wages need to go up or anything. A school district, we have a set amount coming from the state. The state doesn't change that based on inflation or pricing of employee wages or any
Diesel fuel. Yeah.
Diesel fuel.
Yeah.
Utility prices. I mean, it doesn't change, and we can't up the ante on our our price of what we're selling our goods at. It's children being educated and then they graduate. So, good way to see how we're on a fixed budget, yet prices are going through the roof for everything. So
Thank goodness those utility bills are hitting in our energy efficient new buildings.
That's right.
Yes.
Oh.
And had they been in our prior buildings, And with that,
What would
yeah.
the old high school be like
Well,
right now?
and I was just going to say, actually, if you look at our usage isn't up that much. In fact, it's between that old high school and our new high school. That's
Mhm.
really, but it's just not enough to quite offset the price change.
Right.
Mhm.
A very good point to make, though, and I think the public needs to hear things like that
Mhm.
as well. I don't know if the boiler at the old high school would have withstood the weather from a couple of weeks ago.
Right. And can you imagine what that cost would have been to put a Band-Aid on that thing?
Yeah.
You know, with that weather that we had. I mean, that was constantly being fixed all the time anyway.
Right.
So
And the number of leaks it just was beyond. It
yeah.
was taking a major amount.
yeah. So okay. Roll call, please. Sorry. Lost my place.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Bloom. Yes. Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. Moving on to board member communications. Lori.
Well, thank you for the treats and the recognition and the certificate, and for all the people that are signing up to do the spring musical and help. Yeah. And for all the teachers and people that are coming forward to sub and help out more, and the new buses. And Mrs. Fisher, congratulations on her retirement. Awesome that you can. I look forward to that day. And then hopefully that this Mary Alice gets better, her daughter. Hoping that they can pull this all, get better. And that's it.
Chantel.
I echo what she said. Thank you to everybody in the district. You know, it takes everybody. We're very blessed in Fremont with terrific teachers, faculty, staff, volunteers. John and Megan, we appreciate you greatly. Very underestimated roles you both carry. There's so much more to the role than people understand. And I know in our time together here, we've certainly seen, that as well. And you too have led it through difficult times and kept everything together. And it's truly appreciated. And I have a fun announcement. The enrollment in Fremont City Schools is going to go up by 1 in 2028 for Christmas. My son, TJ, and his wife announced that they're expecting. Yay. So get ready.
I love it. Carve out the
Child
room.
number 3.
That's all for tonight. Thank you.
Sarah.
I just hope everybody had a safe holiday and had a nice time to enjoy family and friends. I appreciate the school board appreciation. I am the new kid on the block, and I've learned a lot. And I
dance for us. New kid on the block. You gonna dance for us?
Don't tempt me with a good time, Mr. Price, 'cause I will. So I would just like to express my appreciation for the opportunity to be able to serve. And I look forward to continuing to be able to serve in this capacity, because I've really enjoyed things so far, even the more challenging things that have occurred, I've enjoyed. So I look forward to continuing to serve. Thank you for all the donations that people and community members have given. And again, like was already said, thank you to those teachers, administrators, and the staff and faculty that just kind of go above and beyond. We keep talking about the musical and clubs and organizations, and those are just things that keep our teachers and our faculty members and here in the building and with kids for a longer period of time during the day. And I don't know that they get all the thank yous that they should. So I just wanted to make sure that we could publicly thank them as well. And then just be giant, be present, and be great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the community for donations, for the volunteer hours, the mentors that come in from our community, all those volunteer hours just to help the school district out. Much appreciated. Thank you for the school board recognition. I don't know, as you were talking, it kind of got into my head. I don't know if this was a different city or a different community and a different school district, if I would want to put my name on a ballot to be a school board member, because it would just be a hot mess. I mean, it's for our community and the staff that we have here at this district. I think, I mean, it's been long enough for me on the school board. I think it's pretty easy compared to what some people have to deal with, for sure.
True.
So I appreciate everybody involved in that. The last thing I want to do is I'm going to give a little recognition or a little shout out to some students. It's a little bit different only because I'm also their boss and they work for me, but I thought it was appropriate only because sometimes our high school students maybe get a bad rap for their work ethic and what they can do. I had quite a few, or have quite a few raw students that work for me right now. And the amount of work that they did at Christmas, our busiest time of the year at a cookie shop. If you're not busy at a bakery at Christmas, you're doing something wrong. And it's all hands on deck. And man, the amount of work that they wanted to do amazed me. I have a great group of kids that work for me. So if anybody is out there saying, man, these high school kids don't want to work, maybe I'm blessed and I have the few that want to, or maybe there's just only a few that don't want to, and people aren't getting the credit for what they actually do. Because I'll tell you what, these girls and guys, whatever they do later on in life, they're going to do well. And I've tried to tell them that. So I just want to read off their names. I have that opportunity. So I thought, you know what? We're going to recognize students. So the ones that work for me currently right now, I have Maddie Poulter, Layla Heidelberg, Hannah Rios, Taylor Rupert, Brianna Sims, Jackson Smith, Macy Wolverton, Lily Simonowski, and Reese Shanahan. All those kids, I just want to say publicly how much I appreciate all the hard work you do. And man, if there's anybody else out there that needs some workers, look up these high school kids, but because they want to work, they're ready to. And I tell them, man, if you want to work now, you are just setting yourself up for success later on in life. Keep that mentality of, let me work. I want to go. Let's figure this out. Because they're doing great. So thank you very much for them. So if anybody knows them out there, tell them thank you for being a worker, because that's what we need right now. So, but anyway.
Nice.
So that's all I have. There's no need for an executive session tonight. So if I could get a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Motion by Miss Laird. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Miss Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes. Motion's approved. Meeting is adjourned.